is a new sci-fi thriller film from Blumhouse Tilt. This film stars David Oyelowo as Jack, a police detective who is the uncle of a young girl named Ashley, played by Storm Reed. They have a really close relationship with each other because Ashley's dad is not making the best decisions in life, so he checks in often. Unfortunately, though, one night when he goes to check on them, he finds a murder scene there. The entire family, including Ashley, has been killed. He's very torn up about this. He had a very special relationship with his niece, and he doesn't see where else he can go. But then all of a sudden, he gets a phone call from Ashley several days in the past before the murder even happened. So not only is he now trying to figure out what happened in the past to put the pieces together to find out who killed them, but also try to save her and maybe the entire family in the process. I saw the trailer for this movie. I didn't know anything about it prior, but I saw it and I was just kind of thinking it didn't look all that good. The premise just looked like a really dumb kind of idea, like, oh, okay, if you try to explain this, it's going to be really stupid, but it could really work if you have like some kind of message or some metaphor maybe backing it up, but I don't think this is going to be that kind of film. It just looked really like been there, done that as far as police procedurals though, so I just didn't really care to see this. But obviously I still went to see it because I still try to go to see every film with an open mind, no matter how I feel about it looking at the trailers. I still just try to go see it, and if it exceeds my expectations, then I'm obviously happy about that. If it lowers it, obviously I'm still kind of upset about that, but either way I still try to give every movie a fair chance like this one, and I walked out with my expectations slightly exceeded. There are things that I liked about this film. Unfortunately, I can't really say that I thought it was a decent film at any means. I think this is just really straight down the middle, unfortunately. David Oyelowo and Storm Reed are easily the highlights of this film. I thought these two did a really great job as Ashley and Jack. I think they had a really great chemistry with each other, which is helpful because they pretty much carry the entire film. A lot of the scenes depend on them having good chemistry with each other, so that was really great that you had two actors like this really putting their all into it. There's also a moment in the film where they switched up what was going on with the story involving the concept, and I was like, okay, that's actually a really neat idea. They don't try to explain the concept, which is good, because if they tried to, it probably would have been really stupid, but they utilized it well enough to keep you kind of guessing, especially near the end, because at that point they were kind of editing the scenes pretty well together, and you were kind of thinking like, dang, I hope everything turns out okay here. And there was honestly a moment near the end where I was kind of clenching my armrest just a little bit because I was actually in suspense a bit. And my final positive I can say with this movie is that the score is actually pretty neat and kind of experimental. Like, there were a couple times where I actually heard it and I was like, man, this is actually kind of neat, and it was kind of getting me more into the movie a bit, so I can at least give it that. Unfortunately, though, these flaws don't really make for an overall entertaining film. The worst thing I can really say about this film is that it's just kind of boring, and what really doesn't help with that is that the mystery isn't really all that investing. There's not really a suspect list for you to get invested with, like, oh, is it this person, is it this, or is it these people that we're studying that we're involved with, like, what's going on? It doesn't really have that kind of impact that a mystery really should have. It doesn't help that we don't really get that much time to get invested with our characters either. If it wasn't for David Oyelowo or Storm Reed playing the two leads, then I honestly probably wouldn't have even cared about those characters. Luckily for this movie, they did have those two actors, but unfortunately even their first scene with each other, like just having a friendly dinner with each other, even that feels a little rushed and really just there to set up very obvious foreshadowing later on. There's a scene that happens off screen that's quickly mentioned by Ashley where Jack gets really pissed at her dad and yells at him, lays on him, and then the next day her dad, played by Brian Tyree Henry, is like sucking up to her and like doing nice things for her because he feels bad. That's just mentioned very briefly, and we don't even see this argument. We don't really get a good feel of how the relationship really is between Jack and his brother. And that really sucks because that's a big part of this film. Brian Tyree Henry is a great actor who's really on the come up lately, who is getting a lot of great roles, but unfortunately this is a pretty thankless role for him. You don't really get all that much investment with the actual family either. It just feels like any scene that they do show of them feels like, oh, well, we've been mentioning it so much already that we have to show it at this point. And I wish there was just more interaction there. I wish there was more interaction with Ashley and her parents. I wish there was more with Jack and his brother, because that's a big thing, that he thinks he's a screw up and he's not doing right by his daughter, and he wishes that his brother could do better. And I just wish that they delved on these emotions and motivations a bit more, but unfortunately they don't. So it overall created just a really hollow, dry feel throughout. Like, okay, I care about the two lead characters because of the performers, but character-wise, they only gave you one scene to show like, oh, see, they are good friends. They have a good family connection there. their great uncle and niece. Other than that one very short scene that, like I said, is only really in the movie to introduce very obvious foreshadowing later on, there's nothing else to really support that relationship. There's nothing to support how either of them feel about Brian Tyree Henry at the time. And the movie ends really abruptly, and there's an aftermath that is now missing that I thought, after seeing how certain things played out in the film, that they would for sure try to address, try to get some emotional acting out of these two for it, but they don't. Like, as soon as the movie ends, like, okay, we reached the solution, cut it, we're out of money. It feels like another one of those out of money, end the movie now kind of endings. And you'd think they would address something that happened earlier, but because we don't care that much about these characters anyway, they're just kind of like, yeah, screw it. These two are good, so yay, we're done with the movie. The surprise villain of the movie is not really all that surprising, and not because you can look at the cast list and if there's a big actor there, it's them. I mentioned that whole thing in my Angel Has Fallen review. This time, they tried to mislead you in this film, but where they messed up was they had the famous actor walk up, and I was like, this guy's in the movie? No way. Like, well, maybe there's a surprise villain in this film, maybe he's the villain. And before I could even finish that thought, this famous actor said a line. And as soon as he said this line, I was like, hold up, it's that. And throughout the rest of the movie, I was waiting for the reveal, like, okay, but this whole time, it's actually been this. And I was totally right. And it was just so obviously called out very early on in the film. So not only are you watching this movie that's just kind of very bland and there's not much you can really get attached to, but you also are just waiting for this surprise reveal that isn't really much of a surprise. I will give them credit that when the movie kicks into high gear for like the last 10 minutes, they start going in a direction that, like I said earlier, got me a little suspenseful, because I was like, okay, anything can really happen now. But before that, the entire hour and a half before that doesn't really support that either. There's no other suspenseful sequences like that, and any time that they could have just feels very short-lived. There's also a moment where, to really solidify how I feel about this movie being really bland, there's a moment where a character name is dropped, and it's kind of like this reveal moment. We ran those plates, and this character owns the car, and I didn't recognize the name. I was like, who is that? Is that important? And David Oyelowo luckily followed it up with, wait, that character? You mean the guy who was in this scene earlier that you probably remember now that I'm describing it to you, audience member? And I was like, oh, that guy. Okay, I legit would have had no way of knowing if you did not describe it like that. Literally, he might as well have looked at the camera and have said, it was the guy in that scene earlier where he was being a big jackass, like that scene. He might as well have said that. There's a couple times where I was kind of bothered by the technical side of this movie. For the majority of the film, it feels very underlit, so that kind of got under my skin as the movie kind of progressed, and also there's a couple moments where the editing feels choppy. But aside from those technical flaws, this movie's main issue is that it's just really bland, and it feels very been there, done that. I wish that this movie did more with its concept, and I was thinking before going in, like, okay, the movie's called Don't Let Go, so maybe halfway through the film, David Oyelowo will accomplish his goals. He saved the family, saved his niece. Yay, that's so awesome. But then maybe he's gonna live in this timeline, and then it cuts, and it's like everything's back to normal. And the twist is there's someone else who just changed the past by talking to their relative over the phone or something. And it's like this battle for a bit, like, I gotta change it again. But then that person just goes back and change it again, because this movie is very, very focused on the family bonds are really strong kind of message. So I thought maybe going in that they would push it above and beyond, especially with a title like Don't Let Go. Maybe at one point David Oyelowo will have to be like, hey, as much as I really love my niece, and I don't think it's selfish of me to want her back, the fact that I caused somebody else pain by changing the past, that affects me the most, and I wouldn't want someone else to feel this pain that I have been feeling, so I will stop this chase. I'll stop changing the past, therefore causing this other person to die instead of them, and they can stop changing the past. Like, I will just let go. And I thought maybe that was gonna be it. That's not what happened, and I'm not saying that I'm upset at this movie because it didn't do exactly what I thought it would do. I'm just more upset that they didn't try to go above and beyond with this concept that they had. Like I said earlier, it's a concept that if they tried to explain it, it would have made no sense. It's something that's ripped right out of a fantasy movie pretty much, and that's exactly where it's supposed to be. But if you back it up with a Twilight Zone-esque kind of commentary on society, or how some people feel about changing the past, or missing their loved ones when they perish in a tragic accident, something like that. If they try to incorporate some kind of message, some kind of theme, then it's okay. Like Us, for instance. That movie has a lot of subtext underneath the actual literal thing that's going on. So not only do they explain in that movie what's going on and everything, but they also have a lot of metaphorical stuff supporting it as well. So I'm like, okay, that's a really great idea, and I like what they are utilizing with that. And now we have another Blumhouse movie that had the opportunity to do that, but instead it just went down the very basic route. I'm gonna give Don't Let Go a C. There are things that I was surprised by that made it a little bit better than I was expecting, but overall it's just really muddled down by a lot of bad story flaws that I think could have been touched up to make this movie even more special. I was really hoping for this movie to really surprise me because it's not a movie that's getting promoted all that well at all. On the Box Office Mojo site, it's not even projected to be in the top 10, which is a big bummer for me who predicted it for number 3, but you know, whatever. I was still really hoping that I would see this movie and be like, you know what, this is a movie that's getting slept on and it's actually not that bad. I really hope more of you go out to see it, but I can't really say that. Honestly, Angel Has Fallen came out last weekend. I gave this movie the same grade as Angel Has Fallen. However, I was in a theater where a ton of people were digging it. Like, you could hear people like going like, oh yeah, in the theater. So I would actually say, go see Angel Has Fallen. You might get a kick out of it because it's an action movie and a lot of people don't really care about the criticisms I had with that movie. They'll just have fun. For Don't Let Go, I went in because I had a free ticket on my Regal card. I went into the box office and I saw there was only one other seat in this big theater reserved. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna be in this theater with at least one other guy. The movie starts, the trailers have passed, that guy never showed up, and it turned out I was the only one in the theater. That kind of goes to show you that no one's really that interested in this movie to begin with, and maybe a clever story, something that's more than what it was promoting itself to be, could have helped bring more people in, help people who see it spread the word to others, like, hey, it's actually a really great movie. But instead, they gave you about what you'd expect, and it's fine. It's very middle of the road though, and I wouldn't really recommend it to you. But if you've seen Don't Let Go, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.